All right. Believe the microphone is working? Good. All right, so today we have Lee Hessel again and Katie Hessel, I guess. Or is it? Yeah, it would be Katie Hessel, right?
Katie Blum.
Katie Blum. Tell us about Katie.
Katie is the oldest cat I've ever had. She's probably 22 years old.
And she is originally from Big Bear Lake, is that right?
She was a Big Bear kitten when we got her.
And there's something interesting about Big Bear cats, relative to other cats anyway. They have a prevalence of what?
Well, she has 6 toes on her front feet, but not all Big Bear cats have.
No, but a large number of Big Bear cats have 6 toes.
I suppose it helps them walk on the snow.
So she lived in Big Bear Lake, and of course there is a lot of snow in Big Bear in the winters. And she lived with 2 wolf dogs, right?
Yeah, they were her. They thought she was a dog.
And maybe she thought she was a dog too. I don't know.
Possibly.
But the way that worked is the cats basically could go in and out of the house anytime they wanted.
They had a cat door.
Right, and there was more than one cat too, right?
She had a sister cat till a wildcat used her for lunch.
Oh, really? A related sister?
No. They just came from the same pound at the same time.
Right. Yeah, Katie has some other interesting features, namely her appetite.
She can eat more than any cat I've ever had.
She weighs something like maybe 6 or 7 pounds. I mean, she's not a heavy cat or a big cat particularly, but she is a remarkable eater. I mean, she definitely out-eats Mustafa, who lives here with us. Mustafa is easily an 11 or 12-pound cat. He's a very big cat, and yet Katie eats more than he does. So she's remarkably healthy, given her advanced age. And as you can see, quite the lap cat. So Katie moved here. Actually, Katie moved here before you moved here, didn't she?
No.
No?
No.
Oh, that's right. We were here for a while without Katie. And then we brought Katie back on the airplane. But
cat loose in the cabin.
Now, I think that she did move here before because we actually drove cross country with Jillian, and by that time Katie was already here.
Well, Lee had been here since January, so it's March, whatever your definition is.
Yeah, I guess. Well, the final move with all the stuff, Katie was already here. So anyway, so Katie definitely enjoys the fact that there are no wildcats and no coyotes. And although yesterday we did see a fox in the front yard here. First time we'd seen a fox since moving to Raleigh 20 years ago. But she certainly seems to be getting along quite well. The summers are a little bit longer. The winters are a little bit warmer also. All of these things seem to agree with Katie, so I think she's pretty happy.
Yeah, I think she is.
All right, so let's see. I think when we left off last time, we had just about gotten to the point where you were about to start Cambist Films. But actually, I wanted to backtrack a little bit because I wanted to talk a little bit more about Max the Torch. Now, as I recall, you told us that at one time you guys went for a summer vacation to Atlantic City or something like that. When you came back, the house had burned down.
I think it happened a couple of times.
Oh, a couple of times? Oh.
Yeah, Morris was a house burner.
Oh, I see. And so
Max the Torch.
So who's Max the Torch?
My uncle, Tischler.
So he's not related to Flossie and Max.
That is Flossie. Max was Flossie's husband.
Oh my God, that was Max the Torch?
Yeah, that was Max the Torch.
Oh, I never realized that. Man, he was a good poker player. Or at least he thought he was a good poker player.
Yeah, he wasn't that good.
Yeah, he talked a good poker game anyway.
Yeah.
So I see. Well, that's interesting. Was he living in the house then when it burned down? I mean,
I think that the bungalow down below the house was where he was living.
Ah, I see.
He might have been living in the house too. I don't know.
Right. Okay. And the houses were not his only specialty, though, right? He did cars too.
He did what?
Cars as automobiles.
No, he never burned an automobile, as far as I know.
Oh, so what happened with the station wagon with the gun in it?
Oh, Morris tried to collect insurance from a fashion show and packed old furs in, and of course they didn't burn, so the insurance company refused to pay.
But the car burned.
The car burned, but not enough to burn the coats.
But Max wasn't involved in that?
No,
That was somebody else.
somebody else.
Obviously, he should have used Max. I mean, he was apparently.
Oh, I
rating.
told Morris it wouldn't work, but he didn't believe me.
And so you lost a gun in that escapade, right?
25 caliber wasn't much of a gun.
How did that happen?
Well, Smiley was wearing it as a armed guard for the fashion show, and he didn't have a permit for Connecticut.
So they confiscated
They
it.
confiscated it and never gave it back.
Easy come, easy go. So when did you first get a gun permit? Probably after the Army, right?
After I got out of the Army, yes.
And that was by dint of having furs and needing...
Yeah, I saved thousands of dollars in insurance premiums by being an armed guard at the fashion shows.
It's really hard to get, even then it was hard to get a permit in New York. It's probably harder now. In New York City, it's one of the most restricted gun areas in the country, but you were able to get one because of your connection to the fur business. Right?
Yeah, I had a valid reason, and I had a concealed carry permit for, I don't know, 40 years in New York City.
Right. I mean, and it wasn't like they ever took it away. It was just that you moved and stopped paying for it.
Yeah, well, I wasn't living in the city. What was the point?
Right. Good point.
It got to be expensive after a while.
So did you own any guns before you went into the Army, or did they all come out?
22.
But just a 22 caliber, that would be a rifle.
Rifle, yeah.
Yeah. So you got interested in competitive shooting when?
In the Army.
Oh, of course, because you were teaching shooting.
Yeah.
But that was another aptitude test. They figured out that you could shoot well.
No, I just had a natural ability to put a bullet in a target.
And they obviously that's something they're going to notice in the Army. So when you got out of the Army, you started competing, or how did that come about?
No, I went into the fur business, and then when I joined the National Rifle Association, I developed a set of guns for competition. You need 3 guns, basically, a 22, 45, and a 38.
Right, and you already had the 38 by that time, probably.
The 38 was a concealed carry, a 2-inch barrel. My target pistol had a regular 6-inch barrel.
Now we're talking the 22?
No, the target pistol was the 20 was a high standard semi-automatic.
So that would be the 45.
45 was a Colt 45.
Right. Okay.
Gold Cup.
Yeah. And so you started competing. I guess that would have been in Westchester County.
Yeah, basically.
Right. And by that time you were in Tarrytown?
Yeah, I lived in Tarrytown. I did a lot of shooting in the North Tarrytown police station. They had a shooting range in their basement.
You know, they've changed the name of North Tarrytown. They call it Sleepy Hollow now.
Oh, okay. Well,
yeah, better name, I think. But
doesn't make any difference to me one way or the other.
So, what about the range up by the lakes in Tarrytown proper?
Oh, they closed that because they didn't like guns being up on the range.
But that was open when I was a kid.
Yeah, it was open, but when they put the pool in, they complained about the noise. Of course, when they had races, they used a starting pistol, but that's the hypocrisy of gun control.
So, yeah, when I was a kid, I did all my shooting at that range.
Yeah, well...
And I remember that you had a key. There was a lock, a gate at the bottom, and a rocky dirt road that led up the hill that you could drive really slowly. You didn't want to go more than like 5 miles an hour because unless you had a 4-wheel drive, I suppose.
Yeah, we didn't have 4-wheel drive.
Right. So we would drive up. I guess we could get up about 3/4 of the way, and then we'd have to hike the rest of the way because the last bit of the road was just really impassable. But yeah, that was. I guess it was a 50-yard range.
Yeah, 50 yards was the maximum.
Right. Yeah, and I remember you bought, like you. I started out with a 22 caliber rifle. It was a kid's rifle, a small rifle. But it did have a scope on it, and I ended up learning to shoot essentially left-handed. It's the only thing that I do that I prefer my left hand for is shooting a rifle. And yeah, so I remember that. I remember that range really well. And of course, I went to some meets with you too. And I remember the time shooting and the various different kinds, and you began to accrue quite a number of trophies.
Yeah, well, in the Tarrytown Rifle and Pistol Club, there weren't that many good shooters.
I guess you were probably among the top guys there.
Yeah, I guess so. I was a club champion with both pistol and rifle.
Right. And eventually you ended up with how many guns?
Well, if you shoot in competition, you need 3 guns, basically.
Right, but you had a lot more than 3.
Yeah, I had a snub 38, but that was not a competition gun. That was a concealed carry gun.
Right, and the 22 competition pistol, and then you had a regular 38, regular, not a snub nose 38, right?
No, that was for long 70. Well, you could shoot 50 yards with that.
Right, and you had a couple of rifles, right? You had a real 22 rifle, not the toy that I had.
Well, I gave you a target rifle.
Yes, I ended up with it eventually, but it was yours for a while. And I think did you have an M1? You had something that was...
No, I never had an M1.
I thought you had something...
I had a Springfield.
That's what it was, a Springfield, right. I remember there was something that was higher caliber.
Yeah, 3006.
Right, the 3006, right. So that's the one
enough to stop a grizzly.
Right. That's
what there are no grizzlies around to stop, but...
Well, you never know what will wander off the Rockefeller estate. But probably not a grizzly bear, you're right.
No, there are none. The only grizzlies we had in Big Bear were in the zoo.
And there were some other pistols as well, right? Besides the 238s and the 22. You had a 45 caliber.
45 Gold Cup. That was the 45 caliber match pistol.
So the other thing I remember really well from when I was a kid is you loading your own bullets.
Yeah, I did that for a while. If you shoot a lot, unless you're very wealthy, you have to.
So that's basically why you decided to do it, because it was economical.
I saved money by doing it.
Right. So I would remember you had a Coleman stove, and you would melt the lead, and there's something else would go in there with the lead. I can't remember exactly.
Antimony.
Antimony. Okay.
That's to harden the bullet so it doesn't drool all over the inside of your barrel.
Right, and then you would pour the molten lead into a mold, and how many bullets at once could you do? 4 bullets in the mold, and they would cool down. It was a painstaking process.
Yeah,
and you'd always do it outside because, of course, breathing in the lead fumes is bad stuff. And then eventually you'd end up with, I don't know, maybe 50 or 100 bullets. From a batch of lead.
Well, several hundred, actually.
Okay, I don't remember exactly. I know you would do it for a while. And then there was a special machine you would use to press the bullet into the shell casing.
Yeah. Load the powder. And,
oh, right, and put the primer in.
Yeah, insert the primer.
Right, yeah.
It was a laborious job.
Yeah, it seemed like fun when I was like 8, but probably not as much fun as it looked.
I did it outside on the terrace in the summer.
Right, I remember.
Because the fumes in the lead are very poisonous. My brother Al has a high amount of lead in his bloodstream.
And he used to load bullets in a shed.
Well, he had a lot more elaborate. He had a turret set up where the thing rolled around, and when he got finished, a finished bullet dropped out.
Oh, wow, that is cool.
Yeah, you just pull a lever and it would happen. It would rotate.
Right. Okay, so we're now in Tarrytown, and you're married to Edie, and at some point in time, you and your sister Mickey were given a gift of acreage from your parents, Morris and Toby, right next door to his house, Whitehall, or close by his house. It was on the same property, obviously, and built your own houses there. You want to tell us about, was it Romani?
Romani was the name of the builder.
The architect, right, yeah. So
he wasn't the architect, he was the builder.
Oh, I see, okay. So how did that go?
It worked very well. He helped design the house, and he built it pretty close to specs.
Mm-hmm.
And then, of course, we built it so we could add on, which we did later. We put the wing on with the two bedrooms and the bathroom. And then in the basement, we had a basement down at the bottom.
Right. Originally, there was no basement. Originally, it was just 2 floors or 2 levels, and with a sort of halfway landing in between them. And I remember there was a big when I was a littler kid, like 7 or 8, and I learned how to read, and I of course was liked to read a lot, and I always had to try to. Yeah, I had a set bedtime, and usually wasn't ready for going to sleep. So I would smuggle flashlights in and turn my lights on, and it was always a big deal when you guys were downstairs. If a certain stair would crack, I knew I had to kill the light right in a big hurry, because when you grounded the corner into the hallway, you'd be able to see under my door that I had a light on. So when we moved to the new wing, of course, that wasn't a problem anymore because we were in a different area of the house, and you normally didn't come up into that wing. So that was a big plus. Of course, by that time I was probably old enough that I didn't even have a bedtime. I don't remember for sure. I do remember that was a definite improvement in the quality of life. Jill and I each had a room originally on the 2nd floor, and then when we moved, I think you made an office out of my room, and I don't know what happened to Jill's room, Jill's old room.
It was a guest room, I guess.
It was a guest room, yeah. It probably was a guest room for a while. So then I guess it's about this time, before the addition, that you started Cambist Films, and you talked a little bit about that with essentially getting some coaching from Ava Layton, rather, of the what was the name of her film business? Audobon Films, right? Yeah.
She and Rodney Mesker ran Audobon Film.
Right. So when you started Cambist, am I correctly remembering that the first film you did on your own was Daniella By Night?
Yes, I got it from Audobon Films.
So this was an already existing film. It was in Swedish, I think?
Mm-hmm.
The original language was Swedish or French?
I don't hear you.
The original language of the movie wasn't English. It was something else. It was Swedish or French?
Probably German.
German, okay, right. So what you had to do was you acquired the rights to distribute the movie. You didn't own the movie, but you had the rights to distribute the movie in the USA. Is that right?
Yeah, for 7 years.
Okay.
USA and Canada.
So to be able to do that, you obviously know how to dub it.
Right, which was expensive.
Right, and I think you probably did some editing too, right?
Yeah, I tried to doctor it up.
Did you hire how did you do that? Did you do that yourself, or did you hire a director to do that?
I hired an editor to do that.
Ah, okay. All right, so tell us about that experience.
Well, no experience, it just did what needed to be done to get it ready to make money.
And?
It made money.
Cool. So I mean, you were a brand new business. How did you?
Well, I got arrested a lot.
Now, this was what would have been called in those days a sexploitation movie?
Exploitation.
Exploitation.
Yeah. Okay. It had a couple of scenes with Elke Sommer breast showing, but she was kind of, in those days, she was flat-chested.
Yeah, this was a very young Elke Sommer before she made this movie.
She did about 12 films in Germany, which I think when she went to Hollywood, she was kind of disappointed that she did them.
Yeah, right. They were kind of a albatross or a bad yearbook picture or something like that.
Yeah, but she had a face you couldn't photograph from a bad angle.
Right. So she was the star of Daniella By Night.
Right.
Right. And how did you persuade movie theaters to take it? I mean, you were a brand new company. Nobody ever heard of Cambist Films before at this point, right?
Well, Ava Layton helped.
Okay. So she obviously knew everybody in terms of...
yeah, she knew where the bodies were buried.
Did they have a piece of the action then on Danielle By Night, Audubon?
No, Ava did personally, but not Audubon.
Ah, I see. So she had incentive to help you out. And so was it a success?
Yeah, it made a lot of money compared to how little it cost.
Okay. So what happened next?
I made a film.
Uh-huh. Tell us about that.
Oh, let's see. It was called Aroused. It was a horror film about a psychotic killer that preyed on prostitutes. And the prostitutes got even in the end of the film by castrating them and killing them.
Now, this was filmed in part on Morris's property, right?
I don't know where it was filmed. It was brought in for about $25,000 to the answer print in black and white,
Uh-huh.
35 millimeter.
And who was the director?
Uh, Anton Holden. In fact, it got entered by the Museum of Modern Art in the Mostra Film Festival in Italy, because it's the first director film festival.
Mm-hmm.
I think it still exists, the Mostra Film Festival.
Right. So was this his first movie that he directed?
Yes, that's why it qualified.
And
Oh, that was an interesting bit. The idiots at immigration or customs would not let the print back in the country.
So this was a print that was created in the United States. And
the negative was shot in the United States. The negative was in Movie Lab, and the bureaucrats wouldn't let it back into the country.
This was the print that was exhibited at the film festival in Italy.
Yeah, it was sent. Didn't win anything, but that didn't matter. It added prestige to the film. Had redeeming value. That's basically prevented it from being pornography.
Right.
It wasn't pornographic at all.
Right. Mm-hmm. So did that one make money also?
Oh, it made a lot of money. Yeah.
Right.
Oh, that's where Ray Jacobs. He helped produce it, and I distributed it, and I made money as a distributor and made money as a producer. And he bought earth shoes from that. He took a vacation, went to Sweden. His wife had back problems. She put on the earth shoes, and they disappeared. So he started the whole earth shoe thing, and for a while made some money out of it.
And that was the end of him as a film producer, I guess.
No, he went. That's another story. He went and he got Jan Sterling and produced. He showed me the script. I told him it was a Tempest in a Teapot. But he had Jan Sterling as a name, and he spent about $100,000 shooting it in color. And it turned out to be it was a Tempest in a Teapot.
Mm-hmm.
It was unplayable the way it was.
So what happened with that?
We called it squeeze play. And well, after about a year of peddling it, nobody wanted even to sit through the screening. He came to me, and I looked at it, and looking at Jan Sterling making love to her husband because he wanted her to sign some papers was like watching somebody molesting your mother.
Ooh.
She was a nice actress, a good actress. But, she needed the money, so she did the film.
Uh-huh.
I flew one of the girls in the film over, and I changed it from squeeze play to the Minx.
Oh, the Minx.
That was
I never
the
heard of
Minx.
squeeze play, but I knew the Minx.
Yeah.
I knew the Minx.
And it made a ton of money for everybody.
So when you say you flew her over, you mean you shot some additional scenes?
I shot additional scenes. It was ran on to boredom. It was just a boring film. So what I did, I invented a stream of consciousness for the lead, the husband, so that he could make love to Jan Sterling. He'd envisioned 8 or 10 girls he was screwing. And we just fade from one to the other. So I cut about 90% of Jan Sterling being molested, fake molesting, and went to, not hardcore, but it was pretty.
For its time.
Yeah, it looked real.
Right. Okay. So let's back up a little bit now. Ray Jacobs is somebody that you knew from
The fur business. He was a fur cutter. He cut furs in lamb coats.
So how did he get involved in the fur business?
He was a photographer as well,
Amateur or professional?
professional.
I see. Uh-huh.
In fact, he used the house in Tarrytown for a shoot or two, as I recall.
Uh-huh. Okay, so now when he was shooting, though, as a photographer, that was with still photography, correct?
Yeah.
So it's kind of a leap to get into the film business from there.
Well, he wanted to get into it, and he co-directed or helped on Arouse.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, the stupid bureaucrats at the customs wouldn't let the print back in the country.
So what ended up happening?
Well, I spoke to my attorney, and he said, Lee, you'll win the case, but you don't want to offend the federal government. They're the ones that stop the rednecks from arresting your film without a warrant. I've had a couple of cases where we had U.S. Marshals come so the idiot redneck wouldn't arrest the picture again after he was told it was illegal.
That was when your movie was being exhibited in the South.
Right, and every time it was arrested, the publicity was immense, and I made a fortune out of it. Anyway, they wouldn't let it back into the country. I said, hey, guys, I've got the print and movie lab. I can make 100 prints. We don't care. You can't come back into the country.
So it's still there as far as you know?
No. Rather than sue them and start a fight with the federal government, who was my best ally for, the amendments of constitutional rights, I didn't want to antagonize them. So I had sold it to Germany, and I just rerouted the print to Germany and picked up $5,000 from them.
Oh, so they did you a favor?
No, I would have sent another print. It didn't make any difference. But it just annoyed me, and I finally figured out how to beat them at their own game.
All right.
It was so dumb, they couldn't figure out there were loopholes you could drive through if you didn't mind bending the rules a little bit.
Right. Okay, so we have Daniella By Night, Aroused, and The Minx, and there's probably other movies that you didn't make but just were picking up and also dubbing and then redistributing along the way. That when did we get to? Let's see. I guess Cry Uncle would be the next big project, right? That you did yourself.
Yeah, well, I didn't do myself. John Avildsen.
Well, I meant that you, as opposed to taking a movie that was already existing.
Yeah.
In other words, you created from scratch. Oh, I have another question before we get to Cry Uncle. There was, as I recall, there was a scene shot on the property at Whitehall in which Jillian was featured as the young girl, the kid of a character who was portrayed, as an adult by somebody else. It was just I think it was just one scene near the swimming pool or something like that.
Yeah, I don't remember exactly which film it was.
Oh, okay. I was hoping you might.
Let's see. For the record, I released 21 films, and 18 of them were profitable.
Well, that's pretty good.
They're very good track.
I'd say that's probably better than Audubon.
Yeah, they lost money on a few films.
Yeah.
But they made money, basically.
Overall, right. Not enough, though, for them.
No, well, Radley had illusions of grandeur.
All right, so getting back to Cry Uncle, tell us about how that project came together.
John Avildsen had directed Joe.
Now, that was a movie about the
guy who shot his daughter.
Blue-collar worker who was having issues with his daughter. She was going into hippie land, and he was apoplectic.
Yeah, and he inadvertently shot her.
Yeah, and a bunch of other hippies also.
Yeah, but he brought it. No, I don't think he shot her. He didn't shoot a bunch of hippies.
He shot a bunch of kids. I don't remember.
I don't think he shot. I think the only one he killed or shot was. I don't remember exactly.
I think he ended up shooting some witnesses as well once he'd shot one, if I remember.
I don't remember, to be honest.
Okay. My favorite scene of that movie, although that's not one that you were involved with, but my favorite scene in that movie is at one point he gets hired by a white-collar friend of his to come in and I don't remember exactly why. I think it was to scare some of the other people in the office. and he came in and just pretended he was like this gruff, bigwig guy, and he was going to take over and stomp everybody, and they all got very intimidated by him. And of course, he had absolutely no clue what they were doing at the job, and was completely unqualified. But it was a funny.
Well, I liked the picture. It was well structured. John was a cameraman and an editor for what the hell was his name? The guy that I can't remember. I'll think of it eventually.
So how did you get hooked up with him?
I don't know. I don't remember how I got involved with him. I went to the screening and liked Joe, and he was looking for money.
He had a movie in mind?
Yeah, and actually I had bought the rights to Lie a Little, Die a Little for $500 from a paperback. Who was an Irish detective, and we hired David Odell as a screenwriter, and he converted him to a little Jewish detective. And
in the U.S.
Yeah, it was a comedy. Chronicle was a good film.
Yeah. Now, John Avildsen, I should mention, later went on to direct Rocky and several other high.
He directed Jack Lemmon and Save the Tiger, where Lemmon got Academy Award for Best Actor.
Right. So he became an A-list director. But this, of course, was before that.
Yeah, this Cry Uncle was the second film he did. The film he did after Joe.
So he had a movie in mind, but he ended up doing your movie instead.
Yeah.
Okay. So
the book was called Lie a Little, Die a Little.
Mm-hmm.
And it was it was funny.
So
it made a lot of money. It ran 6 months in Kips Bay and on Broadway.
The movie was actually filmed in New York City.
Yeah.
And I remember one scene in particular where I was at the filming. It was at Kennedy Airport. Or maybe it was LaGuardia. I'm not really sure. I think it was Kennedy, though.
Yeah, it was at Kennedy, I think.
Right. And you did an Alfred Hitchcock turn in that movie, right?
Alfred Hitchcock was the guy that John worked for as a cameraman and an editor.
Oh, no kidding.
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't know that. That's cool.
Yeah, he learned a lot about making movies. John could bring a picture in on schedule and on time.
Mm-hmm. So did he do TV for Alfred Hitchcock then?
I don't know if he ever did TV. Right now he's blacklisted because he caught United Artists stealing.
Oh, well, we'll get to that story, but let's stick to Cry Uncle for the time being. So I guess you gave him the script, but at that time it was done, and he liked it. Is that how it worked?
He helped write it.
He helped. Oh, so he was
He was a friend of David Odell.
Oh, okay. So they were in on it together. All right, that's cool. And then, so tell us about the casting.
John did the casting.
Mm-hmm. And who was in it?
What was it? Alan
Garfield.
Garfield.
Right.
Who died of a stroke later, later life.
Alan Garfield played the detective. And tell us a little bit about the plot.
Oh, the plot was just a detective. It was a parody. It was a comedy.
Right.
It didn't make any real money in L.A., but it ran 6 months in New York.
Yeah, it was definitely a New York flavored movie for sure.
Made a lot of money though. It was a very lucrative film.
Right. So the movie. Let's see. Cry Uncle. You actually own the rights to the movie at that point in time. Is that correct?
Yes.
Right. Okay. And so eventually you sold that off, though, right?
Well, by the time after 7 years, it wasn't making anything.
Right.
And the storage was running up in the money.
Right. So who did you sell it to?
I didn't sell it. I gave it to Trauma.
Ah. Okay. All right. I think if I remember correctly, at one point in time that movie was available on Netflix. I don't know if it still is.
I never saw it on Netflix.
Right. We'll have to look and see. I don't know if it's still there, but I'm pretty sure I saw it someplace, fairly recently, like within the last 5 years. Might be somewhere else on the. In any event, there's certainly an entry about it in the International Movie Database. So who else was in that movie that we know?
Madeline LaRue.
Mm-hmm.
She was a weird lady, but perfect for the part.
Now you did a Alfred Hitchcock turn, as getting back to that trope in that movie, right? That is, a cameo.
Who?
A cameo. You did a cameo appearance yourself.
Oh, yeah, I threw when a hotel was raided, I threw a young lady in the back of my pickup truck and drove off.
Now, this was a hotel that was used for assignations for ladies of the night.
Yeah.
And in the course of the script, I can't remember exactly why Garfield was interested in the hotel, but
somebody was in it.
Yeah, somebody was in it that he was interested in.
I think Alan Garfield was in it.
Right, right. Or was that the hotel where he was being tortured? I can't.
Huh?
Was he? He was. No, that was an apartment where they were trying to torture him with the electric light, with the lamp from the wire from the lamp. They were trying to elicit information from him, and some guy had been to Vietnam and seen it done with a radio telephone, so he thought he could pull off the same trick with a light socket and the wire from a lamp, and of course that doesn't work. He ended up tickling him instead of torturing him. But that wasn't the hotel. The hotel was some other scene. I can't remember exactly why. But so was that the only movie that you did that you were in?
Yeah, I think that was the only one. I didn't have a speaking part or anything.
Right. Yeah, it was just a cameo.
I just threw a young lady in the back of a pickup truck with a mattress waiting for her to fall on.
Right. Okay, so Chronicle made money, and John Avildsen went on to be an A-list director, so that was a pretty successful experience. And then the next movie you made was The Crazies, right?
Yeah, that lost money.
Right, yeah. So tell us about that. Another famous director.
From I guess not Philadelphia. Pittsburgh, yeah.
Right, yeah, that would have been
Night of the Living Dead director.
Yeah, Mr. George Romero, the famous Night of the Living Dead director. Now, he had done Night of the Living Dead by then, right? This was.
Oh yeah, that was the first.
That was the first one he'd done.
And the lead for the original Night of the Living Dead was a white guy, and the guy couldn't remember his lines or read them like a wooden Indian, so he took a black guy as the lead, and it worked perfectly.
Yeah, he was really good in that. I wonder if he's done anything else. I thought he did a really great job. So, how did you get connected with George Romero?
I don't remember how I ran into him, but I'm sorry I did because I lost money on, and I even changed the title of the picture from, let's see, what was it? Originally, what the hell did he call it? I had to change the campaign, the trailers, the one sheets, all the advertising.
Because they all had the old name?
Yeah, they had the old name.
Right. So tell us a little bit about the movie.
Well, it was the end of the world.
Right.
Basically, a virus got out of the Army's control.
That they had developed.
That they had developed as a weapon, but they couldn't control it, so it wasn't a very good weapon. There was no antidote for it.
But it was pretty effective. What did it do?
Oh yeah, it drove people crazy.
Right. And
it didn't make them eat anybody, but they became insane and homicidal.
Right. And so it got loose in a little town somewhere in Pennsylvania, probably?
I don't remember. I tried in New York, and I spent money promoting it and advertising it. I even changed the title. What the hell was it originally? Can't think of it.
So that movie featured Edie as a.
It didn't feature.
As a second.
She played
secondary character, supporting character.
Yeah, she had a bit part in it.
Right. A speaking part, though.
She was a scientist.
Yeah, lab assistant or
lab doctor or something.
Right. Yeah, she was the assistant.
And of course, the irony of the thing was there was a man who was immune to the virus, natural immunity, and nobody recognized it.
Except the doctor at the end, I think.
No one ever did. His girlfriend died, was killed, and he went into shock, and he was just put in with the rest of the crazies.
Mm. Right. I thought at the end the doctor had blood from that was.
No, that was the irony. The thing had started spreading out of the
Containment
area, and it was too. There was no cure for it. They never developed a vaccine, but they never realized that they had an immune person who had blood that might have made a vaccine.
Right. Yeah.
So, and then of course we entered them. It was called Codename Trixie after.
Oh, that was the original name.
The Crazies was the first name. And it died, and I spent probably $75,000 redoing a whole campaign, new trailers, new one-sheets, new stills, everything, and it still doesn't work. Codename Trixie was a lead balloon.
Well, apparently the powers that be in Hollywood thought The Crazies wasn't so bad because eventually the movie was remade, in fact, fairly recently.
Well, yeah, but you don't realize a lot of movies are made in Hollywood for the benefit of the director and a couple of name actors, and they don't care really whether the movie ever makes money or not. Anybody who makes a movie without having distribution is stupid. It's like Russian roulette. You can't win.
So did the remake of The Crazies make money?
No.
No. So wonder if it lost as much as yours did.
I don't know. I wouldn't have lost quite so much if I hadn't retitled it Codename Trixie and made a whole new campaign up.
Right. You ended up losing. It was like 2 movies.
Yeah. It's, also the making the picture didn't work either.
What do you mean?
Well, the picture never, exhibitors didn't want to play it because it didn't make any money in the theater.
Oh, okay, right. So was that the last movie that Cambist made?
No, Cry Uncle, I think, came in.
No, Chronicle was before The Crazies.
Oh, okay.
I don't think there was anything that you made after that. You may have distributed some stuff after that, but at that point in time, the business was really changing, wasn't it?
Yeah, basically. At one time, I had like 12 people working for me.
Talk to us about how the business model altered and changed. I mean, the way that you were making money originally really wasn't possible after a certain point, right?
No, well, what happened was the major circus would come along and buy up the independent theater, and then you can no longer play them. The art houses disappeared.
The independent theaters basically were your bread and butter.
Yeah, and without independent theaters, we had no place to go.
Right.
And TV hadn't generated a lot of income yet. So there was a bad patch of time.
Well, there would have been a fairly limited TV market for your product anyway, right?
No, actually, there was a good market for it, but it hadn't been developed yet.
Plus, I don't think there was video at that point either, right? So you couldn't just...
Video became foreign sales. Ended up making money too.
That would have been ironic if you had taken a movie from Germany, repackaged it, and then sold it in a foreign market. But I guess that would have been an early form of recycling. So Cambist Films kind of petered out, around the mid-'70s or so?
Yeah, it kind of dried up, and there were no more. The sub-distributors couldn't make money because there were no theaters for them to play.
Right. So basically, you closed the business probably in the early '70s, thereabouts.
Yeah, I had trouble with the IRS.
Oh, tell us about that.
Oh, very simply, I was cashing checks for furriers, charging them like 2% to cash them, and they didn't want to endorse them because they were selling the furs without charging the tax.
So this is left over from the loan shark business?
Yeah, it was part of the loan shark business. It was a lucrative part. To get 2% with no risk, it was not a bad return.
But you weren't doing the loan business at the same time you were doing
Yes.
films, were you?
I did. I had a partner in the loan business, but I got out of that when the FBI decided I was engineering bankruptcies.
But so the IRS was basically chasing a really old set of happenings at this point.
Well, yeah, no, it was unfair because they audited all of my books, and the one thing I did was run a straight set of books.
This is for Cambist now.
For Cambist. But because I had a lot of cash sitting around, I could cash a lot of checks.
So you were still cashing checks even with Cambist?
Yeah.
Okay.
Cambist Films was cashing checks, and they said it was income.
Right, which of course was like 2%
Well,
of it was income.
I reported the income from the checks. It was only 2%.
Right.
Didn't amount
But
to,
they wanted 100%.
they wanted 100%. Of course, they couldn't prove it, so we finally settled. And I think I closed Cambist down because Cambist Films agreed to pay him $110,000, and I closed the thing down and gave him nothing.
Oh, well. Right. So, okay. And so at that point, you kind of transitioned over to real estate, I guess, right? Pretty much.
Yeah, I went into real estate in the ski areas.
And when we talk about ski areas now, we're talking about New York.
Hunter Mountain.
Hunter Mountain, which is in the Catskills, about, 100 miles north of New York City?
About that 2-hour drive.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So how did you get into that? You were, of course...
I was a skier.
Yeah. Now, I should say, I'll leap in here for a second. We were skiers, and of course this was because of you, primarily. But, I mean, all four of us, Edie, myself, and Jill, were all really kind of addicted to skiing, I would say. Maybe not as badly as you, but we would spend virtually every weekend during the winter when there was snow driving up, usually to Vermont. Occasionally we would go to Hunter, which was the closest area, because they made a lot of snow there. They didn't really get enough natural snow to be able to exist, but it was cold enough they could make their own snow. But usually we would go. Hunter wasn't that great an area, and it was worth driving an extra hour and a half or 2 hours to get up to Vermont. And we would go to Mount Snow or Killington or...
we had a cabin at Mount Snow.
We would rent a cabin at Mount Snow for the whole winter often. We would go to Stowe. We would, the various places. Of course, Stowe is further north. Stowe is like a good 5 hours drive, I think, from Westchester. But in any event, we did this virtually every weekend. We would pick you up at the train station at as early as possible on Friday night and leave directly from there and drive up to our cabin, and then ski all day Saturday and ski all day Sunday, and then come home late Sunday night. And this was, and there were other families that we were skiing with a lot. The Schoenbergers and the Kalin, not the Kalins, the Peter and I can't remember the name of the other family.
Well, they ran an advertising agency.
Right. Yeah.
Pace Advertising.
Yeah, I can't remember the name their names off the top of my head, but in any event, it was a pretty social thing. But primarily, of course, it was for the skiing that we did it. So anyway, we're skiing every weekend. So you're real familiar with all these ski areas, and obviously you still have a house at this point in Westchester County. So if you're going to get involved in real estate, it really would be kind of a reach to do it in Vermont, because that's a long way away. But Hunter, not so far.
No, Hunter was the best skiing for the least amount of driving.
Right. So how did it come about that you made that very first investment?
I went to a real estate agent and started looking for rentals.
Mm-hmm. So it was kind of a conscious plan decision.
And I think at one time I had like 11 units.
Now, that doesn't mean 11 separate houses, because some of the houses have more than...
Well, one of them had 3...
partitions.
Yeah.
Right. But they all get rented separately, so that's a fair amount of management to keep track of. And
I did a lot of the repair work myself.
Eventually, you sold the house in Terrytown and moved up to Hunter, right?
Yeah.
Right, so you could manage it
I
better.
moved in I used to rent a place there, but then I moved into one of my rental houses which was very nice. It was an acre of ground near 60 acres of bird sanctuary.
Right. And so, how did just walk us through how that business worked? The rental business. How did that work?
I made some money out of it for a while till the thing got bad and people couldn't afford to ski.
So basically, you would buy the house, borrow money to buy the house. You would have a mortgage on the place.
Yeah.
And then there were really two seasons, right? There was a winter season and a summer season.
Right.
Of course, the winter season by far being the more lucrative.
Right.
And there would be agents up there that would do the renting for you.
I had real estate agents.
Right.
Charlie Thorpe was probably the main guy.
Right. So people would come up looking to rent a place either for the weekend or for the whole year or something in between.
Well, I tried to rent it for the whole season. I didn't want people coming and going. You never know who to blame for what's missing when that happens.
Right. Plus the wear and tear tends to be greater
Yeah.
when you have lots of people coming through because they have no responsibility. They're not going to be there the next weekend, so they don't care. That we're talking, I guess, now that really started, what, in the middle to late 70s?
I don't remember the dates. They weren't critical.
Right. And you kept that up until you moved to California, really, which would have been...
Yeah, well, I sold them all before I left for California.
Right. And that would have been in the early 90s. So
I loaded up a van and drove across country with it.
Right. Okay. Well, we've been going about an hour now, and it's about time for us to take a lunch break.
But I'm not hungry.
Well, Katie will probably be happy to eat your lunch, knowing her. If we get up, that's what she'll do. She'll go into the kitchen and start asking for food. So next time we'll talk a little bit about how you met Sally in California, and
that was simple. Jillian knew her.
right. Yeah. Okay. Well, we'll save that for next time. So for now, we're going to sign off, and we to be continued.
Why do you like boring people?